The 12 hours of Sebring is just around the corner, and with the new GTP tire model, it can be a lot more tricky than what it used to be before. That's why I thought I would guide you through a lap with the new GTP around Sebring. Let's jump into it. The lap time is a 1 minute 46.9 in around 29-degree track temp, and the setup is from Apex Racing Academy. Now, let me show you around the lap on Sebring. Now, just to show it to you in full speed, the first corner, down to 4th gear, hitting the apex and then getting back on throttle. Now going into the second corner, it's actually a difficult section. You definitely do not want to be braking too late. You want to make sure you brake too early because of this upcoming section that comes after turn 2. If you're too deep into the second corner, you will be compromising your line through the rest of this section. Anyways, my braking point is sort of when this access road comes out from the side. I brake down to 2nd gear initially. We don't hit the apex on the first kink, not the second kink either, but the third and final of these kinks here. Now I don't actually get on the curb, that's because it kind of bounces you off the line, but sort of just hugging the car around the curb and then getting back on throttle right here. Back on throttle, and as I get over this curb, you can see my throttle input actually decrease. You can see right as I hit it, I just lift off the throttle a bit as well, and that's to not unsettle the car too much, essentially, because when you're going over the curb, you're putting a lot of pressure on the car, and if you're also on full throttle at the same time, it can upset the car. All right, also, as I sort of land, I aim for this curb on the outside here on the right side of the track as my turning point, as my brake, and my braking point. You can see I'm not a lot on the brakes, and that's because this next corner can be really sketchy. You really don't want to be upsetting the car here, and you really need to be smooth on your braking inputs, your throttle inputs, and your turning inputs. It's really a corner where it's easy to upset the car both on entry and on exit. Let me show it to you in full speed. 2nd gear over this curb, and really just trying to be as smooth as possible on the inputs because it's super easy to upset the car. You can see even on the exit, I'm really being smooth on my throttle, and I still manage to actually slightly upset the car. So be as smooth as possible, hit the apex here, and get a good exit as there's a long straight coming up. This straight is good for lapping on the GT cars, something like it, just getting your ARB changes done or whatever you want. Now down into this hairpin corner, it is actually quite easy to overshoot it. You want to make sure that you're braking somewhat early. I can show you my braking point, which is right when this tarmac basically changes color. You can see if you look at it from cockpit view, it's quite easy to spot when you're actually driving. You're coming down towards the hairpin corner, and right here where there's a tarmac change or a little line is a good place to start your braking. Whoops, that's a funny camera angle. It's a good place to start your braking, down to 1st gear essentially. And maybe sometimes you want to turn in a little bit earlier than expected. If you turn in too late, you'll actually lose quite a bit of grip and likely miss your apex in this corner. Getting on throttle basically as we get onto the apex, as there's another long straight, but especially in cars like the Caddy, it can be hard to find the traction. So look at my throttle inputs here. I'm being smooth on the throttle until I know that I have the grip and I'm pointing the car in a straight line. Now before we move on with the video, if you want to get your hands on the setup that I am using for this lap, there's a link in the description to go and sign up to the Apex Racing Academy. This is not sponsored or anything like it. I just think it's a great service, especially if you don't know how to make setups or you're not too great at making setups. We have some of the best coaches, the best sim racing drivers on the platform that make some of the best setups for you to try out, for you to compare yourself to the best pros. And essentially, it's just a good service. So if you want to try the setup out that I'm racing on, head to the link in the description. Now let's get back to this track guide and show you some more tips and tricks. Now coming up to this next section, this is probably one of the most technical sections on the track in my opinion. It's really difficult to sort of find the grip and also carrying the right amount of speed through the corners and stuff like that. Let's go more in detail with this whole section now. For the first corner, I brake at these 4 cones or maybe even a little bit before them. Right here, I peak at around 90% brake pressure into this corner. As we're braking from a high speed, it's pretty possible. I take this corner in 2nd gear, but I'm actually being very careful on the entry that I'm not trying to carry too much speed or push the car too much. So it's essentially important that you brake early here as well and not push the braking too much, because if you ruin the exit, you'll be compromising the next 3 corners or so, which you really don't want. So braking early, 2nd gear. Don't upset the car on entry, rather be more smooth on it, because for this next corner, you want to be kind of pulling the car as much to the right side as possible. I'm getting on throttle here, nice and smoothly as well, but you can see I'm trying to get the car as much over to the right side as possible, more than we actually had before the update, because before the update it was fine to sort of be on the left. You could still sort of take this next corner easily flat out, but with this new tire model, this next corner becomes quite a bit more tricky. So I'm trying to leave around a car's width of space here so I can sort of set up the next corner. You can see I'm already turning to the left here, and I lift off a little bit here just to make sure the car doesn't break traction to around 80-90%. Keep that until I feel like the car has the traction again, because it's important to avoid slides on this tire model. If not, you overheat the rears and that'll come back to bite you at the very end of the stint. Into this next corner, I'm braking earlier than before. Also, because of the new tire model, we're pushing this corner a lot more. You actually compromise your line slightly more into this braking zone. I'm braking already at this point, and I'm sort of braking in an opposite line. You can see I'm sort of braking towards this point instead of necessarily braking in a straight line. And I'm also braking a little bit while turning, so it can be a tricky braking zone. Make sure you don't run deep, because there's a straight coming up as well afterwards. Third gear, and I get on throttle right basically as we get on the apex. If you look right here, if we're playing slow motion, there's a little compression where the car gains a bit of grip, and that's a good point to get on throttle. Now, once again, as I said, important to brake early in this corner so you are able to get this good exit. If you get too much on this curb, you will be bogging down the traction control and losing a lot of time on the exit, which you don't want. What I use here is essentially fine. It's nothing crazy. You see, I don't get fully onto it, but I also do put two wheels basically on the flat part of it. But you can see it gets very rough on the edges here, and that's not going to be good for your dive, for your traction control, and for your pace. You're going to be losing a solid amount on the exit. Down to the Le Mans chicane. You can be taking GTs on the right side here, but make sure you don't do it too late into this corner, because this corner is actually a solid bit tighter than what it actually feels like. There is only one racing line through as well. I'm braking at basically when this curb here on this side, on the left side of the track ends. Braking down to third gear for this third bike, because I'm using all the track on the entry, getting all the way out to the grass here. Down to third gear. I don't go on the inside of this first curb, as these 3D curbs that we have nowadays on Sebring are very dangerous. But you can see I am putting two wheels on the flat part of the curb. I am getting on the throttle here, not fully 100% before the direction change, but around potentially 80% or so. You can see I make sure to also leave a car with space here. We don't want to be all the way out here, because that'll really compromise your line to the next corner. So I'm leaving around a car with space to the outside so that I'm able to turn the car to the left, ride this curve a bit, not too much. Don't get on the, if you put your wheels on the inside of it, you will be likely to loop the car around, but you can ride it essentially like this, right? Use the whole track on the exit. You can see right as I get off the curb, essentially it's a pretty satisfying thing to do, but right as I get off this curb is when I start my braking and turn the car the other way. So I just brake a little bit to take off some speed, and so I'm able to get to that apex with actually a decent amount of speed, and then I start my turning in as well. Slightly miss the apex here for me. You can get slightly on the curb on the inside, but I wouldn't recommend using too much of it, because you will end up bottoming out. And then we also use all of the exit curb as well. Once again, it's like the exit curb does get on the traction control, so actually if you do not get fully over it, like, or even further out than this, you know, that would be optimal. But as I said, I slightly missed the apex, could have used slightly more, and then maybe been slightly less on this exit curb, not bogging down the traction control as much. Let me just show you from inside of the car what this looks like, because you know, it's sort of a difficult corner combination to really get right every single time. Listen to on the exit of this corner how the traction control sort of bucks down when I get too much on the curb. You can hear it. You can sort of hear it a little bit. We can definitely see it on the speed. So try to stay off the curb, but essentially it doesn't make the biggest difference whether you stay on it or not. I use it just to have a bit of extra track. Now down to the final corner. This is a super tricky corner, to be honest. It is hard to get right every single lap throughout a full stint. But once you do get it right, it is actually a pretty satisfying corner. So my braking point on this new tire model is essentially at the two cones. That's also when I start turning the car in. So I brake at the two cones to around 80%, start turning the car. You can see I aim to just get on the outside of this white line. Don't get all the way out here, but just on the outside of this white line, and I sort of keep turning just to go tighter and tighter throughout the whole braking zone, slowly making your way towards what's essentially going to be the apex at the second kink here. I get on throttle just before this, and that's just to get a good run down the next straight. You can see basically at the right before we hit the apex, I get on throttle in third gear, really being smooth on the throttle as well, even breaking a little bit of traction on the exit for me, but it's nothing that essentially costs me too much time. Maybe if you do too much throttle stint, it will come back to bite you. Now, I do hope that you found this track guide useful. If you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button. I wish you the best of luck for the Sebring 12 hour in the weekend. I've been Marcus, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.